Welcome to Discovering. I once again find myself on the frozen waters of Lake Michigan. This time, we're not fishing. I'm in Menominee for a look at ice boats.
It's been a great weekend, and it's provided some great racing and some great competition.
We'll check in with Shiitake Matt to talk mushrooms. And if you're not hungry, you will be. So stick around. It's Monday night and time for Discovering.
The secret streams that flow beneath the cliffs of colored stone. Forest thick and healthy with birch and pine and oak. Surrounded by the greatest lakes this world has ever known. The black bear's awesome presence as he roams the hills and fields. Call of the timber wolf, the loon's lonesome trill. The eagle soaring high above, the trout lies deep and still. These are what I treasure, the only way I measure feelings that I have for this fine land. There is so much to discover when you're a long-time lover of northern Michigan.
At this time of year, when you say the word ice, it's usually followed by the word fishing. And the word boat doesn't come into play until ice can only be found in cubes. Well, when you put the two together, you end up with a high-speed, wind-powered ice cruising machine that's, well, pretty cool to see.
I'm currently scoring for the DN Western Region Regatta, which is a championship for DN sailors from Minnesota, Wisconsin, the UP of Michigan, Illinois, and Indiana. And we're lucky that Menominee has such great ice because a lot of other classes are holding their regattas here as well. And one would be the Class A Skeeter, Wisconsin Skeeter Association. I believe they have 8 boats racing today. And they have sailors from Wisconsin and Michigan and Minnesota. There's also a stern steer regatta. Those are the original ice boats. They were first invented in Holland back in the 1700s, and they're still a racing class. Menominee hosted one of the biggest regattas in ice boating over 100 years ago called the Northwest. This was the birthplace of it, of these large regattas coming together. We didn't have the Northwest this year because of COVID concerns, but so these are, some of these races are kind of informal. We're racing on separate courses. Normally we would race all on one course, but because of COVID and stuff, we're racing separately. In the DN class, you generally go 3 times around. The Skeeters will go more around. The Skeeters reach a lot bigger speed. They can go up to 100 miles an hour. So a mile course for them, they can go 4 or 5 times around. And the DN will go about 60 miles an hour. They go 3 times around. The DN is a one design that's kind of to a box rule. Stern steers are limited by sail size, and anything can be used on those, although they're very traditional boats, so they generally stick to wood, although there are some carbon fiber. Skeeters are the Formula One class of ice boat racing. They are an open class. The only requirement they have is a 75 square foot of sail area. They can use any material they want. They do take advantage of that fact. They build them out of carbon fiber, titanium. They use the latest technology. It's been a great weekend. The wind has shifted a little bit, but we're happy that it's steady, and it's provided some great racing and some great competition.
For many of us, mushroom picking season is right around the corner. It won't be long and we'll be scanning the woods in hopes of filling our sacks with our favorite tasty forest treat, morels. For me, it usually means a visit with Matt of Shiitake Creek Mushroom Company. Which brings up a question. What is a shiitake and where does it grow in our area? Well, I talked with Matt to find out.
Welcome to Shiitake Creek. I'm Matt, and this is our shiitake yard, or a laying yard, and this is a traditional or wild imitation of shiitake. And these shiitake mushrooms are growing on sugar maple. Sugar maple is what I personally like to use. It adds a nice mellow flavor to the mushroom. The mushrooms definitely taste like what you grow them on. Oak is preferred to use by a lot of people, but it adds an oaky tone. I don't necessarily like that. Also, we have a lot of problems with oak wilt and things like that. So oak trees have enough problems without me harvesting live trees to grow mushrooms on. So I like sugar maple in particular. We try to hand harvest this ourselves from small acreage holders. We work with them. Usually the USDA Natural Resource Office Conservation Districts will send those people to us. And then we basically do for small acreage holder thinnings. So we'll come in and we pay as much or more than a logger or a mill generally will, and we only take the small diameter stuff to grow mushrooms on and leave you with a nice thinned out forest afterwards. And we cut those all by hand, transport them back here. We drill them and film, and then after a period of incubation of 1 to 3 years, they are ready to fruit. And when we think of mushrooms, we tend to think of the mushroom that we eat as the mushroom. Of course, that's the fruit of the organism. The actual organism is inside of this. And then this is the fruiting body, or the fruit that pokes out from the log. And so after a nice little dry spell and then a hard rain, they will fruit on their own, or we can force them by submerging them overnight with a big temperature difference between the water and the air of about 20 degrees or so, and do it on a schedule, which is what we do for our production logs. When you hear about the health benefits of shiitake, this is what we're talking about. Not the stuff grown in the warehouses, nothing against that. We have to do some of it in the winter. But this is really, truly a wild imitation of the product. And interesting little anecdotal story is that the US government acknowledged that mushrooms were medicinal after we bombed the Japanese with atomic weapons. The mushroom farmers in those valleys ate the ugly mushrooms and did not develop cancer. And so they started looking into it, and they quickly discovered that shiitake, maitake, and enokitake were very potent anti-cancer mushrooms. And that's how they first became known as medicinal mushrooms, for whatever it's worth. So these guys raised out here in the environment are chock full of vitamin D from the sun, same kind we make from our body. So it can be as simple as eating shiitake mushrooms to beat the seasonal affective disorder or the winter blues, because they have so much vitamin D in them. And that works for the dried ones just as much as the fresh ones. So these white flecks on them are called ornamentation. These check marks here on the cap is from where this is a young mushroom trying to grow, but the wind was dehydrating, and every time it would get watered, it would try to grow more, but it caused a crack or a split, almost like your fingers do if they get really dried out or whatever. And so that's actually highly prized. If you Google the word donku, D-O-N-K-U, you'll quickly find that this cap cracking, especially when it's greatly exacerbated to look almost pure white, but still growing at a button stage, is extremely sought after. And in traditional Japan, that's part of the dowry for a wealthy man's daughter. So if you want to marry an upper class echelon, you're going to have to come up with some donku shiitake to do so. These are also considered to be the most medicinals. We grow them outside, so they're in contact with the environment, And that struggle for life gives them a code against those viral and bacterial things, right? And so when we make our shiitake extracts, we make them out of the donku, which are supposedly the most healthful of all. One of the fun things we do is we turn them upside down and we dry them up in the sun, which increases the vitamin D value by double or triple, which is awesome if you're taking that to beat the seasonal affective disorder and winter blues. If you didn't know this, Wisconsin produces more shiitake mushrooms than any other state in the US. It's mostly because of our forests and our climatic conditions, but also we have a very strong growers society here in Wisconsin that helps get other farmers started. And if this is something you want to do for yourself in your backwoods, we do offer cultivation courses on this with a variety of other things that we do here, and we strongly encourage you to get some going in your back forest. All right, so we're growing Winecap or King Stropharia mushrooms. There's a variety of names. King Stropharia and Winecap being the most common. I think from the garden giant to the compost mushroom, etc. It is native to North America. The Latin would be Stropharia rugosa annulata, which refers to the annulus or the ring around them. The reference of Winecap because there's a dark burgundy cap. It has a nice white stem. It has a nice crunch to it. It's one of my favorite pickled mushrooms. This mushroom grows exclusively on agricultural waste on the forest floor, and it needs soil contact to get started. And we've raked off all the duff and debris, and we've kind of scratched it up with a rake. And so the first step we're gonna do, we're gonna put a little bit of spawn that we've already made right in contact with the ground, which we've done behind us, right? And I'm gonna put a layer of paper. Now this can be any kind of paper. We use paper grocery bags wherever possible. So whether you lay out a bunch of paper bags and then do this, or if you're like us and you've got a roll of paper that we've got, this is recycled paper. So we're gonna take this, first thing we're gonna do is gonna put a layer of spawn down here, right? And I like a nice mix of particulate sizes, doesn't have to be all small, right? And we're gonna do this in many layers, kind of like making a lasagna, so to speak. So this is already wet from the rain. I use a bag about every 10 feet, right? So the next thing I'm gonna do now that I have my paper laid out, and that is I'm gonna take the straw that should be wet, but it's about to rain like all heck. So it'd be okay to do this just a couple layers and then let it get rained on and then finish up with the wood chips on top at the end. So I'm gonna put down a nice little inch or so layer of straw. Then I'm gonna come back with my rake. I'm gonna tamp it down. If you don't tamp it down, those fibers won't contact each other. And the mycelium will grow along these, trying to reach from one to the next one, vertically, horizontally, every which way. And if these are pressed down, which they will be afterwards, especially when we add the wood chips on them and they get enough moisture, then there's no contact. And the mycelium just can't grow through those air gaps, right? So we're gonna do this in layers. We're gonna take a second layer of spawn, and we're gonna do the same thing over the top. Again, another layer of spawn. I like a mixed particulate sizes like I said earlier, and we make our own spawn, so it's not really a cost issue for us. So I like to go heavy on it so it runs faster. Now that we've got this down here, last step, we're gonna cover this with about 2 inches or so of wood chips. Now, the size of your mushrooms is gonna be directly related to the size of the particulates that go in. If you use a lot of really small, fine stuff, you're gonna get nice, small mushrooms. If you get big stuff, you're gonna get big mushrooms. I don't want big mushrooms. They're harder to sell. I like beautiful, nice standard size mushrooms. So I use a mix of particulate size like this, and then right before the winter hits, I'll put some bigger fuel on it, like some big chunks to overwinter it. So when we think about this, the mushroom is growing from underneath the paper and down towards the earth from over the top of the paper. Now with this layer, there's a layer of spawn between the paper and the straw. Now that layer is growing up through the straw and down through the straw. Same thing after we add another layer, is that it's always growing together, so it will fuse together and create one giant mass very quickly, which will virtually eliminate the possibility for competitors to overtake it and colonize the substrate and get other mushrooms in here. Even though that's the case, you still need to be able to competently identify that what you planted is indeed what's popping up and you're going to harvest. Otherwise, bad things could happen. We'll show you a picture of a Winecap mushroom so you know. You can always reach out to us and say, hey, is this a Winecap? We get 1,000 of those a day. Please do.
Got some venison in the freezer? Here's something you're going to want to try.
So today we're going to be making candied brandy backstrap. First off, you want to cut up an onion. And I usually just cut it up into rough pieces because you just want the flavor of the onion, not the actual onion itself. You take that out before you put it on the grill. And we're going to start off with half a cup of brandy. Do a half a cup of olive oil, quarter cup of apple cider vinegar. Most of my measurements aren't quite exact. I just wing it usually. Grab some of our back strap here. I just cut them in like bite-sized pieces. Makes it quicker when you cook it on the grill too. Otherwise, if you want to make it easier to cook on the grill, you could do like tenders. It's like little strips. So now that you got all that in there, I like to put my garlic in on top of the meat. I just kind of wing it. Garlic you're supposed to measure with your heart, so. Same with the mustard. About 2 tablespoons-ish, give or take. You mix that up. Light brown sugar. I usually do about a half a cup. And obviously you're gonna kind of change these with however much meat you have. And I like to let it marinate for about 6 to 8 hours. Put black pepper in there. Italian. Again, I just measure with my heart. Salt. Yep. A little more liquid, so. I try to get the liquid at least even with the meat. Like I said, I like to have it marinate for about 6 hours or so, 6 to 8 hours. The longer the better. Cover it up and put it in the fridge. Toss it on the grill. So we got the grill about like medium heat, around 300. And I just put them, I like to put them on top of the tin foil so they don't fall through the grates. Been there, done that. The other way you could do it is you could cut them up a little bit differently too. Then they wouldn't fall through the grates, but. So you could also get one of those pans with all the holes in them. Spread them out a little bit. Put a little bit of honey on them. And that way, when it cooks, it actually ends up caramelizing on them. And you close the lid, let them sit for a little bit, let them cook, and then come back in about 5 to 10 minutes. And just move it around. Make sure it doesn't stick to one spot. It's got a ways to go. You can tell once they start getting ready, usually that's when all the liquid's gone. But we'll let them cook a little bit longer in the honey and the liquid, and then we'll come back, pour more honey at them, and then they should be done. You can tell when they're done though, they start to get that nice caramelized crust on them. And I like them a little crispier. I mean, you could take them off here, but I like them crispy. Pull them off the grill here. The nice part about the tin foil too is it's easy cleanup. Candied brandy backstrap.
Well, that's it for this week. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next week right here on Upper Michigan's very own Discovering.